Hi everyone and welcome to this evening's webinar. My name is Maeve Nolan and I've been working with Portobello Institute for over 20 years as both a tutor and a lecturer in the early years department. I would like to thank you all for taking the time out to join us for this informative webinar this evening. It's very much appreciated. And just to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and the recording will be available to you on our YouTube channel in a day or two. And there will also be a live questions and answer session at the end of the webinar. So this evening we're delighted to have two wonderful guest speakers with us. Firstly, Vanessa Sharpe, who's all the way from Arizona. Vanessa worked as a lecturer in Portobello Institute for some time and currently works in early education in the US and is completing her doctoral studies. Vanessa is going to present her experience of the comparison between STEM and STEAM in early years education in Ireland and in the US. Both STEM and STEAM are integrated approaches to teaching and learning which challenge preschoolers' natural sense of curiosity. So STEM stands for science, technology, engineering and maths. STEAM then represents STEM plus the arts like humanities, language, arts, dance, music, visual arts, design and new media. So we're delighted to have Vanessa with us this evening. Our second speaker then this evening is Kelly Duggan. And Kelly is an MA student just completing her final year with Portobello Institute. Throughout her career, Kelly has lectured in the east of London and also has a great passion for maths in education, particularly maths in the early years. She currently promotes this passion for STEAM in early years in her own setting, Kickstart Education. Again, we're delighted to have Kelly with us this evening. So we'll get the evening started and welcome our keynote speaker, Vanessa Sharpe.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here today to discuss the Aistear Framework and how STEAM and early education look with the Irish perspective and within the US perspective. We're going to look first of all at what the difference is between these two. So today we look at the beginning. We'll just define each of these and where they originated from. So why STEAM versus STEM? We will discuss what STEAM actually looks like in our practice with very young children from birth to 6 years. And we will discuss and identify what art in STEAM is, why it's important, and some of the benefits to the child. We'll then go on and see what STEM and STEAM looks like in the US and Ireland, and look at some of the policies that are in both of those countries. And then finally, we'll look at some real examples of STEAM in early years education. We'll make some links to the themes of Aistear, the Early Childhood Curriculum Framework. And then we have some final thoughts about what could be next for us in early education. So my goal today really is for us to together to gain a greater understanding of how STEAM ideologies, and I'll come back to why I'm saying ideologies here, and the Aistear Early Years Curriculum Framework complement each other and our work with children. I'm sure that most of you are aware of the differences between STEM and STEAM. STEM being, of course, science, technology, engineering, and math. And STEAM incorporates all of STEM, but adds arts in. Historically in education, art or the arts has been seen as not an essential subject or not a core subject. But as early educators, I'm sure that many of you have witnessed how incorporating the arts creates that avenue to learning and exploring, and then also feeding curiosity. So in the beginning, with STEM, the STEM acronym was introduced into the US National Science Foundation in 2001. Previously, this acronym was actually SMET, S-M-E-T. Really not that nice of a ring to it. However, when they changed it and they changed it to STEM, it became more popular and the concept really took off. At the same time, there's a lot of research being conducted. One of the research papers was Rising Above the Gathering Storm. And this linked educating the workforce in STEM-related subjects to the national prosperity. So how we're doing as a nation within the US. And they realized that if we don't educate our people in STEM, we won't have sustainable growth in the economy. The jobs won't be created because workers would not have the knowledge base to carry out these jobs, and there wouldn't be anything to make, as there was nothing was being invented. So this was all really concerning for the US, because at the time they were ranking 21st out of 30 countries. And they realized that they were lacking this knowledge and competency base in STEM related topics. So STEM is defined as teaching and learning in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It typically includes educational activities across all grade levels, from preschool to postdoctorate, in both formal in our classrooms and also informal in after-school programs, etc. settings. So really, STEM teaching is a constant. It's not limited to primary or secondary education. However, STEAM came along. It was introduced by Georgette Yackman in 2006. She took those 4 subjects that were included in STEM, but said, let's put arts in there too. And the arts include humanities, drama, visual arts, and really an extended base there. And it was argued that art encourages innovation, design, thinking, and creativity. And if we think about it, our top tech tools or toys that we use right now, such as the iPhone, art and design is essential to producing these new innovative materials. So with all this in mind, by 2019, over 3,000 teachers in the United States, in all 50 states, and 38 countries had been trained in STEAM education. So STEAM education, their motto is to have fun, functional literacy for all. The mission is that the STEAM framework includes a way for all subjects to relate to each other and in the rapidly changing world, for developing a reality-based, lifelong learning skills called functional learning for all. This really fosters the idea that science and technology are interpreted through engineering and social, language, physical, musical, and fine arts. And all of these are based in elements of mathematics. So that's quite the loaded statement there. But when we break it down, science, technology, engineering, and arts, you can recognize the mathematical principles within each of these elements. So why STEAM? So it introduces those fine arts and sensory concepts for extended learning. And here we can just see a few examples of them. We have dance, creativity, building, literature, singing, storytelling, performing, painting, poetry, drama, movement, graphics, and visual arts. So these art concepts can help the young child to reinforce learning, to gather their information, and then to make conclusions based on their findings. So this is my favorite part. This is my sweet grandbaby. Her mother's given me permission to share these pictures with you. But I'm just fascinated watching her and watching young babies in general and seeing how they assimilate information and they make meaning out of it. So if we look at the world through the lens of a young child, you will recognize the wonder as they experience things for the very first time. My grandbaby here is at a baby sensory class, and as you can see in these pictures, you can recognize there's different elements of STEAM being incorporated here. I know that I can see, for instance, science as she questions these textures. What is it like? Is it soft or is it hard? Can I eat it? Can I smell it? And technology, I know that you can't hear it in these pictures, but in the background, there's music playing. The ball pool is blown up also by technology. Engineering, she's experiencing various textures. The ball pool is designed to maintain the balls and allows her to immerse herself within them. And the arts, there's music movement. She waves that muslin and rolls around in that crepe paper, all the while experiencing color and song. And mathematics, I can see size being explored with those balls. I can see exposure to color names. Are we counting together as we wave the muslin? So simple activities like this have STEAM within it. We can see STEAM in action when we're discussing young children and also children with special needs. Every activity is full of information-rich gathering moments. So why STEAM? By encouraging creativity and imagination, we're promoting the child's ability to explore and comprehend their world and increasing their opportunities to make new connections and research new understanding. So what we're being told here is that our environment, if it's rich in experiences and open-ended art opportunities, it creates that environment that helps children to understand the world around them. The type of environment or available activities will differ depending on the age and ability of each child. So I think of what is great about STEAM really is that we don't need expensive or specialty equipment. We're working with common items that's in the child's natural environment. So here I featured a sensory basket. What I recall with my own young children is having a cabinet in the kitchen that was not locked. And in it, I had some pots and some wooden spoons and some other kitchen supplies. My children loved to drum on those pots and to stack them up and to build them. So looking back, I can recognize that there were STEAM principles being explored there. And likewise, if we have a basket like this or just common materials within our environment, we will see and we'll recognize children exploring those and gathering information from them. So what does STEAM look like? Here again is my grandbaby. This time she's being exposed to different activities. They're all rich in STEAM activities and concepts. Here you can see light being explored and even her experimenting with taste as she tries to gather information and draw conclusions. So we can see that STEAM ideologies not only occur within our natural environment and naturally within young children, but also that there are many benefits to it. And among some of these benefits are curiosity, problem solving, more engagement. It fosters communication, and this can be seen in many forms with mark making, body language, song, and dance. There's shared ideas, and it's also encouraging empathy towards others. So currently in Ireland, we do not have an official STEM or STEAM policy for early years education. However, the Nurturing Skills, the Workforce Plan for Early Learning and Care in School-Aged Children, 2022 to 2028, states that within early childhood education, early years educators should ensure pedagogical strategies to support children's emergent language including digital literacy, numeracy, creativity, early science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. So in other words, STEAM, are developed and implemented appropriately. And the Aistear Framework Practice Guide 2009 does state that each of the STEM areas is relevant and important for young children whose curiosity and drive to explore and understand the world is their starting point for learning. So adults can support children's engagement with STEM by providing them with opportunities to solve problems, to use their imagination, to ask questions, and to collaborate with others, to experiment, to make things, and to try different ways of doing things. And like all learning and development, STEM is best supported through secure and loving relationships, through interactions, and through play and playful experiences. The Action Plan for Education 2017 says that STEM, we will begin the implementation of priority actions identified by the STEM Education Review Group. However, this Action Plan for Education does not mention STEM, a STEM plan for early years education, and instead it focuses on school-aged children. It does mention within this inspections and quality within early years, but we're lacking that in that early years education within this. So similarly, in the US, a STEM education strategic plan is formed. It's charting a course for success. It's the American Strategy for STEM Education. It outlines a 5-year plan, but again, it does not include a birth to preschool age plan. The US has in place a policy for STEAM education. This provides funding grants to schools and takes into consideration the socioeconomic ratings and school performance and other factors. This funding is used to help upskill teachers and to pay for STEAM training for them. So certification is done through steam.edu.com. And this is why I've been saying STEAM ideologies. Yes, STEAM, like Aistear, is a curriculum framework. But if you want to proclaim yourself as a STEAM certified educator, or to call yourself a STEAM or a STEAM school, you have to pay a subscription. You go through a training program and you purchase a STEAM curriculum framework. And to maintain this, you must comply with certain standards that they outline. In the US and Arizona, where I live here, I see many schools that advertise themselves as being STEM schools, meaning they specialize and they emphasize STEM subjects. So many of these schools have preschools where this ethos would also be incorporated. There are other schools that are certified as performing arts schools, meaning that they maintain the state standards in core subjects, but they have an extended performing arts program. And this may include additional dance, music, drama, and art classes. And I've also seen some of these schools offer half-day options where they cram their curriculum into a half day and the rest of the day is free for the child to explore other avenues of their life. The US Department of Education released a report called Call to Action for Science Education. In this report, the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine in 2021 advocate for an improved K-12 and post-secondary science education program. But again, there's no mention of early years education and links to STEM or STEAM. So we know that early years education is rich in STEAM opportunities. We recognize that as we work with these very young children, that there is a process for learning, that we often see this in very young children as they use all of their senses to gather information. We see reasoning and predicting. We recognize the child's innate curiosity, but most importantly, we can see the child making connections through this investigating. So what does STEAM look like in our early years centers? It looks like a bug hunt. These are pictures actually taken from my early years service a few years ago. It's the materials that we have, but we're using them now to investigate, and the children are extending it the way they want to. And as early years educators, we need to be able to recognize the links that are being made here to their learning. If we look at STEAM as a model, we can see science here, the investigating, the answering and asking questions. We can see technology as we use magnifying glasses and other equipment. We can see engineering when they're saying, how does the spider make their web? Does it have a particular design? And we can extend how this kind of thinking to how do different spiders make their webs? Do they make different shapes? For instance, black widows make really messy spider webs. So we can kind of explore that avenue with them. We can see art. Are we singing? Are we singing Incy Wincy Spider? Are we drawing? Are we creating our own web out of yarn? And then mathematics. How many legs does a spider have? And do spiders vary in size and weight, etc.? So as all of these questions are happening, these type of activities are in line with Aistear themes. And I've just chosen to use exploring and thinking for this one here. I'm going to switch my slide, but I'm going to just keep on this thought here. So I've used exploring and thinking here in particular, and aim 1, where children make sense of things places, and people in their world by interacting with others, playing, investigating, questioning, and forming, testing, and refining ideas. So children do this by exploring their environment, by understanding changes within themselves and others, by exploring their natural environments, and by understanding the concept of time, space, and shape. They're exploring concepts of height, size, capacity, money sometimes, not in this case necessarily, matching and sorting. So lots of things are happening here that we can tie in together with STEAM and the Aistear themes. So here I've included, again, another science-heavy activity where we're watching the life cycle of the butterfly. And as you know, this takes several weeks. But here you can see us preparing to release them. So STEAM principles and the Aistear themes that we just discussed also tie in here too. And we are not limited to just linking one Aistear theme. You will find links within all 4 of the Aistear themes. And for time purposes, I'm just exploring identifying this one with you now, but we will go and extend to other ones in a minute. So let's just take a moment here to reflect on what principles of STEAM are being incorporated here and how Aistear themes could link in. As you can see, we are making some bread. So I've chosen communicating here as the theme to link in with this STEAM activity. So you can see that there's investigating. We're asking questions as we're baking, the equipment being used. We're lifting, dropping, scooping, pouring. For engineering, for art, we're creating something. We're singing songs and possibly storytelling. You might have a story to go along with it. I know I like to use the little red hen to go along with it. So we can incorporate other ideas there too. And mathematics for measuring and counting. So here, communicating also ties in with this STEAM activity. There's problem solving, there's body movements, there's sound, there's rhythm as we're counting out things that we're doing. All of the aims here within communicating are being explored. So again, what does STEAM look like with us? We're looking at a leaf hunt. This is autumn. We're looking for leaves that are falling. So I used my Montessori botany cabinet here to make an extension opportunity for the children. Again, we can see clear links to STEAM principles, but this time I chose identity and belonging to link in. I think that in early years, we're very good at providing art opportunities for extended learning. But how often do we use literature, poetry, dance, painting, or drawing to make these extensions? Again, I think in early years, we're quite good at that. But as children get older, we tend to shy away from these activities thinking that they're too babyish. I know that as a grown woman, I've often used these principles of making up a song to help me to learn something that I'm studying. And it does help to reinforce these ideas. So identity and belonging here was what I linked with this to. So here we have just some random activities that we were doing with the children at different times. I have a few other learning experiences. So we have making some orange juice. So it always amazes me when you ask a young child where orange juice comes from. Typically, their answer will be the shops. But real life experiences and investigations help children to gain a better understanding of their world. We know that. And the second picture is of a geode that I brought back to the class. It was enclosed, so we couldn't see those crystals, and we needed to break it open and find out what was in it. The amount of questioning, reasoning, cooperation, and other activities that were happening was amazing as they tried to problem solve this. After several days of trying various ways of opening it, eventually with multiple tries with that hammer there in that picture, we had success. And when the children saw what was inside, it was quite amazing and exciting to them that this was hiding within there. So again, just a spontaneous activity. A parent had donated this puppet show theater to us. And I just put it out one of the days, and the kids just spontaneously created a puppet show. And here we can see those STEAM principles again and the Aistear themes. I'm linking right now just well-being into this, as that children will create and be creators. That children will be creative and spiritual. So you can see them expressing themselves and these experiences that they have in art. And you can also tie in a lot of the STEAM principles to this too. So this is a research project that I did a few years ago. And here, where I'm researching block play and the benefits it has to children. So as I read the passage here, I want you to think about STEAM and Aistear. And I want you to think about what is happening and what principles are being covered in themes. So child number 1 says, it's a very big boat. There's sailors on the boat. It's a sailing ship, not a pirate ship. Child 1 continues, well, there has to be a captain. There's a secret passage in here. It's really far down at the bottom. And child 2 says, the people are on holidays. That boat is big, but doesn't go very fast. It's a slow boat. People sleep on the boat. The boat has a captain too. And then I said, what's this part of the boat? Pointing and questioning. And the child 2 said, that's the slide for people to go on. They can eat on the boat too. That's the passageway here. And he points to the cylinder-shaped block. Child 1 removes a lot of the blocks then. And child 1 continues and says, now it's a power boat. It goes really fast. See, I added a big engine. So here we can see that this is an activity that takes place every day within earlier centers. But we can see that it's rich in mathematical principles. There's engineering as construction goes on. They're using their knowledge of science, of water and floating to construct their play and their play dialogue. And art is present as they make up this story and cooperate with one another. So to continue on with that idea, this again is my grandchild. And my daughter just took out the Hoover the other day and started to vacuum. But this was fascinating to her. She's 9 months old, and she immediately went over to it and wanted to explore. She was pulling on all of the cords and pushing the buttons and wanted to see what would happen, and was really quite fascinated with it. She was incorporating all of her senses to figure out what was going on here. So this really, to me, is STEAM in early years, particularly young babies and children from 0 to 6. As they get older, we see kind of more documentable, I suppose, or solid principles of STEAM being used in education. But when we're dealing with really young children and babies, we're looking and identifying these principles. And again, here, this is her first experience at the beach, and it was a cold day in Scotland. She's all wrapped up. But my daughter actually sent this as a video to me a few weeks ago, and she's trying to pick up that sand and hold it because that's what she knows. You know, if you hold on to something, it's not going to slip through your fingers usually. And she keeps on picking it up and watching the sand fall through, and she's quite confused because she doesn't know why this is happening. So you can see this reasoning and this questioning and this trying to figure out what is going on as she explores her environment. And finally, she tries to taste it to see, well, you know, let me see what's going on here. Let me figure out and use all my senses to find out what's going on. And her mom there wasn't too happy about her trying to taste that sand, as you can see. So just to look at what could be next. I don't know if it is going to happen, but there is something called STREAM. This was introduced by Dr. L. Robert Furman, and he emphasized the need to introduce reading and writing. So he said that how do we expect our future employees to be able to compete in science, technology, engineering, and the arts, or math, without putting major emphasis on the critical need to read, comprehend, and write? So that's something to think about there. I personally feel like STREAM is, we're already incorporating reading and math principles within STEAM. We are already introducing children to numbers and letters or words and symbols. And that, for me, within early years is where the reading and writing comes into place, and the mark making. So he is trying to bring in STREAM as a concept rather than STEAM. So this could be the next evolving idea that's happening. I know now within the United States that STEM and STEAM are quite well known, but STREAM not necessarily so much right now. It's beginning to be whispered about and talked about, but I don't know if it will take off as a concept because, as you know, all of the STEAM activities or principles really do incorporate elements of reading and writing within them as well. So I have included some references for where I pulled some information from. You're welcome to have a look at those. And also just some further information if you want to read a bit about STEM or STEAM education and where we are in Ireland and within the US. So thank you for listening to me. I'm going to turn the time back over.
Vanessa, thank you so much for this fascinating and insightful presentation. It's a fantastic example of how you put STEAM principles into practice. You've included wonderful examples of how to tickle a child's sense of curiosity and connect learning areas to encourage their entire holistic development. Thank you so much. And we will now go over to Kelly Duggan for her presentation. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, thanks Maeve and thanks Vanessa. I'm just going to sort my screen out for everybody. Okay, so this presentation is titled STEM and the Aistear Framework, a Hidden Curriculum. So thankfully we'll see some similarities between what Vanessa has given us, and thank goodness we haven't contradicted each other. So we have 3 short objectives to get through on this particular presentation. So hopefully we're going to understand STEAM within the context of early years. We're going to explore the relationship between STEM and the Aistear Framework. And we want to examine how to support children's STEM learning experiences within the Aistear approach for our children aged 0 to 6 years. So Vanessa kind of ended with it there, and I guess I've chosen to start with it just to really address what can be termed the battle of acronyms at the moment, which is kind of prevailing across all of our education systems. But the STEM acronym was officially coined in 2001 by the US National Science Foundation in the hope to encourage the STEM movement in attempts at government levels to address those gaps in employment and sufficiently prepare students for 21st century STEM-based employment opportunities. Then came along STEAM, as Vanessa told us about, and really this was voices starting to call for that arts to be included, supporting expression and more of a holistic and well-rounded approach to the STEM movement. And then, of course, we're starting to see the acronym of STREAM predisposing, I guess, concerns around international literacy levels and advocating that without high literate levels, no amount of preparation or engagement will prepare for STEM employment in itself. But I guess what's important to emphasize is regardless really of which acronym we're focused on, the philosophy of STEM remains the same, with the key principle orientated around that of an integrated curriculum. So if we consider life and work as adults, you know, it's a clear interdisciplinary nature, and therefore in the early years, the primary focus needs to remain on that interdisciplinary aspect of STEM learning, supporting that holistic integration. So we also need to recognize the hidden curriculum aspect that is STEM. And, you know, for some of you, you might not even be aware, but you probably are already facilitating a STEM curriculum as we speak. So simply put, unless we recognize STEM, it will remain hidden, and therefore we may be missing out on those opportunities to nurture children's innate STEM curiosities and those intrinsic motivations. So for us this evening, we're just going to focus on that STEM acronym, and that's really just to keep in line with the Aistear Síolte tip sheets that were kind of released there in 2020. So I guess the big question is, why STEM? So lots of research present on the benefits of STEM in early years. It's said to improve creativity, problem solving, scientific inquiry and critical thinking, and lots of other cognitive benefits. And of course, building knowledge of the world that is around us, therefore creating a foundation in answering the challenges of our 21st century. So as we know, early years is a very, very significant period where learning is encapsulated through a child's own exploration of their own world, their environment, their relationship with others, and their place within society. So it is an important time in which young children are first introduced to the complexity of living and the impact this has on their own lives. So in early childhood, parents, caregivers, and us as practitioners, we need to be very supportive of children so they can participate in solving problems to become creators of their own world. And in essence, as practitioners, we need to understand that STEM is not offering children a particular science, or it's not offering children a particular maths activity to sit down and do. It is providing just natural hands-on opportunities where children can naturally explore and play, building upon those STEM skills and learning theories, experiencing motivated dispositions in their achievements of investigating, discovering, thinking creatively, and problem solving. So with this, why, I guess, are we now seeing this STEM movement? Why are we hearing about it more and more within our Aistear-based settings? And one reason, and Vanessa briefly mentioned this as well, but one reason is that our Department of Education is currently aiming to have the best education and training service in Europe within this coming decade. The department released the STEM Education Policy Statement 2017 to 2026, and this sets out the ambitious objectives and high-level actions required to achieve and improve the STEM education experience and outcomes for all learners. The vision for STEM education, in line with government's ambition to have the best education and training service in Europe by 2026, Ireland will be internationally recognised as providing the highest quality STEM education experience for learners that nurtures curiosity, inquiry, problem solving, creativity, ethical behaviour, confidence and persistence, along with the excitement of STEM collaborative innovation. So the department really expresses that this vision is to be realised through a programme of reform in the education system itself, driven by a shared policy focused on better outcomes for all learners, raising overall standards of teaching, learning, assessment and school improvement. So although this vision is aimed specifically at school-aged children, I guess fundamental to this is government is recognising that nurturing young people's STEM curiosity starts in early childhood. So hence it's almost, I guess, by default at the moment that we are starting to see this STEM movement within our early years settings. So with this, let's start looking more specifically, I guess, at Aistear and STEM. So although it feels as though Aistear, I guess, has always been present within our settings, it's hard to remember now a time when we haven't had it. It was only founded in 2009. And important to remember that that developed out of a shift in policy and pedagogical discourse, and in accordance to Hayes, was helping us move from measuring competencies towards enhancing capabilities, rejecting that image of a normative child. So this in turn promoting possibilities of children's rights, children's agency and autonomy. So childhood image of that active and competent child started to emerge and has almost become, a norm, a socio-cultural truth for those of us on the floor in early years. And this new construction of childhood orientated towards the child's present with a focus on being rather than becoming, emphasizing the importance of meaningful experiences, nurturing responsive relationships, and play and language as priorities for supporting children's early learning and development. So through these acknowledgements, we realise that children are natural scientists who naturally inquire about the world around them and therefore naturally engage in STEM discourse. So therefore, by considering STEM's integrated philosophy and acknowledging engagement in STEM occurs naturally, we begin to create spaces that fully embrace and nurture the inquisitive mind of the active and competent early years child, establishing those lifelong and relevant 21st century knowledge and skills. So as we begin to integrate STEM into our settings, we need to be cautious that we do not revert back to those traditional images of childhood. We do not want to revert back to that goal-orientated or didactic modes of early years pedagogy. So in terms of, I kind of mentioned that we are basing this presentation on our Aistear Shielded Practice Guide and the tip sheets that are now available for 0 to 3 and 3 to 6 years of age. And the first thing really that guide promotes us to do is to stop and notice and name STEM. So, you know, we know now that children's learning is interconnected from a young age, and therefore as practitioners, we must help young children make sense of the world around them by supporting their learning through connections. And when we consider STEM within our Aistear-based settings, you know, this isn't complicated at all, and experiences can be as simple as a baby dropping a set of keys to see how many times the adult will go and pick them up. So as a sensitive and attuned STEM practitioner, we need to notice that. We need to name that. You know, an example is gravity or how many, and then we begin to put together those interdisciplinary aspects and recognizing those science and maths opportunities that are occurring naturally in front of us. So next thing that our Aistear Shielded Practice Guide promotes is that whole aspect of a STEM-rich environment. And again, you know, we don't need to become preoccupied in running out and buying top-class STEM expensive equipment. And there's loads out there if you go and research it. But what I'd suggest is that we do put on what can be termed, you know, that STEM lens. So are we really nurturing those inquiry and exploratory aspects of STEM within our indoor and outdoor environment? Are we fully utilizing our treasure baskets and those heuristic play bags? Because of course, these are providing scientific opportunities to explore properties of materials. Children begin to notice similarities and differences. And over time, children will naturally begin to categorize and order. Are we providing, you know, an array of blocks in our block areas? Are we utilizing digital cameras and age-appropriate tablets? And are we recognizing that a lot of our books, you know, our simple fairy tales such as Goldilocks and the Three Bears, you know, they are promoting STEM concepts and can be utilized really quickly within our settings. Goldilocks, for example, you know, again, science aspects of why she fell off the chair, engineering aspects of how could we build a chair or make it stronger, mathematical concepts of measurement, and more science aspects in terms of textures and temperatures. And when we kind of start to consider our outdoor areas, again, are we utilizing those challenging spaces? Are we incorporating different surfaces? I think we were all great. You know, there was a big boost of motivation years ago when we first, you know, came across these mud kitchens, but are we still utilizing them? Are we exploring the multisensory options that they bring? Are we utilizing our open spaces for different types of movement? And are we really nurturing and getting stuck into our gardening areas and exploring those aspects of living things? So really, when we think about STEM-rich environments, again, what's important is we start to recognize and nurture those natural STEM experiences that are occurring all the time in our environments. So the next aspect we need to try and promote is that whole aspect of speaking STEM or talking about STEM. So hopefully we've seen, you know, it's never too early or it's never too late to start STEM, because STEM is naturally occurring all around us. And as with any age, nurturing responsive and respectful relationships between adult and child becomes key. So therefore, embracing STEM language becomes key within our Aistear settings. And again, something that our Aistear Shielded Practice Guide is heavily promoting. So if we can just consider babies really quickly for a second, you know, babies in particular are primed to investigate their surroundings in striving to make sense of the world around them, relying on the attuned and sensitive adult in providing those multisensory and open-ended opportunities to advance the engagement and explorative aspects of their environment, manipulating, testing, hypothesizing, questioning, promoting those innate creativities, curiosities, and learning. So central to the adult's effectiveness in their ability to provide these rich language learning opportunities, we need to become proactive and confident in speaking STEM. So therefore, the challenge for us as practitioners is recognizing and responding to these sensitive STEM moments that are occurring through our effective use of STEM language. A simple example of this could be where a child is pretending to bake in a role play corner. You know, they're stirring a big pot of porridge oats, for example. So sensitively there, we can step in, we can start to co-construct, and we can start to introduce STEM vocabulary and consider STEM inquiry by questioning, for example, why are you mixing the oats? We can then look at predicting what will happen if we add some water to the oats. We can explore, well, what did you notice? We can discuss, what else could we add to the oats? And we can help them observe by asking questions such as, are they the same? Are they different? Did you notice any changes? So with that, we also need to be confident in using specific STEM vocabulary, and really as early as we can, you know, words such as discover, predict, hypothesize, measure, compare, test, experiment, record. These need to be everyday occurrences. And this allows children to develop the language to describe and talk about their STEM experiences. So using scientific language early on extends and deepens STEM experiences, teaches that advanced vocabulary while also sees the vocabulary in action, encouraging a deeper growth of STEM knowledge, supporting those essential exploratory skills and dispositions. So ultimately, young children extend their communication through the nurturing of words in meaningful STEM contexts. So let's speak STEM with our early years children through attuned and responsive interactions, ensuring that as practitioners, we promote exposure to STEM vocabulary and phrasing, supporting learning through the connections of those hands-on STEM opportunities. So in terms of actual STEM learning experiences, you know, what do these look like? So our Aistear Shield practice guide is really supporting and promoting multi-sensory, hands-on, open-ended learning experiences. So let's have really a quick look of kind of what that looks like in practice. Okay, so in terms of science, we need to remember again that children are natural scientists, and therefore settings need to nurture those aspects of scientific inquiry. So we need to be able to again notice it, name it, and speak scientific inquiry. So a simple example here is a child making bubbles. So by making these bubbles, children are given the opportunities to predict and observe the effect of mixing liquids, for example, water and washing up liquid. They might even observe different shapes, different size of the bubbles, different directions of the bubbles. So although, you know, this is kind of, I guess, portrayed predominantly as a science-based activity, what's important is that we recognize those integrated aspects of maths, the technology, the engineering. So once again, we're drawn back to that core philosophy of STEM, that of integrated and naturally occurring experiences. So when we think about technology, we need to recognize that helping children to see the use of technology in context supports their understanding of technology's role in helping us to do things we want to do, rather than seeing technology as an end in itself. So let's consider role play. This offers opportunities for different technology aspects of play. For example, pressing that microwave button, scanning a card into the shop area, using the keyboard in the doctor's surgery. Placing it in context supports the extension of learning as well as the integrative aspects of that STEM experience. We also important to note here that by supporting that technical language ability, children can explain why they want to use particular technology, which is central to their development of a critical attitude to technology in everyday life. So in terms of engineering, this is all about those creative processes that provide opportunities to design, make, and build. And we need to really consider these in terms of open-ended experiences. So, for example, designing, making, and building projects that integrate STEM learning, such as creating a sailboat, that hopefully might float. So we can use those materials such as tin foil, fabric, wood, and clay. And if we work together and then promote or develop a particular blueprint for the children's design, this will help them to identify possible problems and work out how to solve them. So once again, although the activity might originate in terms of those engineering principles, it overlaps or it integrates with those other aspects of STEM. In terms of maths, the STEM education policy by the department there acknowledges maths as underpinning all STEM learning experiences. So once again, emphasizing the importance of viewing the interdisciplinary discourse of STEM. In terms of learning experiences, this might involve construction play or junk art activity in which children can explore geometry through 2D and 3D shapes. And again, bringing all that vocabulary into play, pyramids, cuboids. These provide opportunities for that STEM talk, and we're encouraging that exploratory aspect by, again, thinking about STEM questioning. So shapes, do they roll? Do they stack? Do the shapes have edges, sides, and corners? Do they fit? Do they not? Why? So constantly enhancing that exploratory aspect. So really, in short there, STEM offers, natural opportunities, and they really integrate quite naturally with our 4 Aistear themes. So if we think in short about exploring and thinking, I think that's evident through everything that's kind of we've spoken about there this evening. But in terms of communication, we can clearly link that to STEM speaking. In terms of well-being, we can think about it in terms of nurturing those natural dispositions of curiosity. And in terms of identity and belonging, we are providing that platform where children can start to identify really within this STEM world. So we're nearly there. So just in terms of the role of the practitioner, we don't need to panic too much. We need to recognize, though, the importance of STEM education as an interdisciplinary pedagogy, promoting those innate curiosities and intrinsic motivations of early learning. We need to provide opportunities to exercise curiosities, predictions, hypotheses, problem solving through hands-on, multisensory, open-ended play. We need to plan and identify those STEM language and vocabulary opportunities. We need to focus on the processes of STEM learning, nurturing the natural occurrences. It's not about those outcomes. We need to become competent in recording and assessing those STEM experiences, and we need to be responsive and attuned to those emergent STEM experiences that, again, are happening all day naturally within our settings. But it is easier than you think, because really it's never too early, it's never too late to start learning about STEM. And Vanessa gave us great examples earlier in terms of babies and their engagement even with STEM. In STEM, it isn't a new subject, and it's great to really think of it in terms of a way of working, a way of interacting with children. STEM, it does foster children's love of learning, and STEM in early years is based on key philosophies such as exploration, solving problems, and trying out those new ideas through hands-on activities. And we need to remember that children are naturally brilliant at this. They are those natural scientists. They naturally are inquisitive and ask lots of questions. So taking the time to help them find out those answers is what STEM is all about. Staff, we do not need to be trained specifically in STEM, but we need to be able to show how to support children using that STEM-based philosophy, and remembering that it's, you know, about that integrative approach. It's about the interdisciplinary aspects. We do not need to go out and buy those expensive resources. You have an array of them already in your setting. It's just, again, about building the awareness of that. You know, and STEM helps children learn and develop and promote those future academic successes. You know, and it's naturally happening all day, every day. So as practitioners, we just need to build up our knowledge, build up our confidence in recognizing those emergent STEM opportunities. So just to really quickly to conclude, so as practitioners, we need to embrace STEM learning, not as a separate entity nor a separate subject-based opportunities, but as naturally occurring play experiences that occur naturally all day, every day in children's exploring and understanding of the world around them. So chances are you all are already engaging in STEM experiences. And hence, as practitioners, we simply need to recognize it as a hidden curriculum. We need confidence to name it, speak it, and therefore embrace it as a natural start to each child's early learning journey within our Aistear-based settings. So there's a reference list there if anybody would like any information. And other than that, I hope I didn't talk too fast, but thank you for listening.
Oh, Kelly, thank you very much for this. Thank you very much for this interesting and insightful presentation of STEM and how to incorporate STEM concepts into the early years setting in very practical ways in order to promote and extend the child's learning experiences, while also incorporating, you know, the Aistear themes, whilst, you know, enhancing the child's social and emotional reasoning, creativity, flexibility, and problem solving. Very interesting presentation. Thank you very much. So I think now we're going to bring Vanessa back, and we're going to have our questions and answers session with Vanessa and Kelly, if that's okay. Okay, the first question from Clara McCabe. Okay, Vanessa, you have made some good links to the themes of Aistear and STEAM, but how can you see this supporting partnerships with parents? For example, linking the learning between school and home, encouraging parents to engage with STEAM at home. Do you think this can be successfully achieved? Vanessa.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I think that this can absolutely be achieved, but I also think that this is always a problem we have, is collaborating, communicating with parents and letting them know, you know, what exactly is happening with their child. We might not often see them, you know, as much as we would want to see them and be able to speak with them as much. So I think it's really about having an open dialogue with parents and making sure you have a good communication system with them, that whether it be through a weekly newsletter or a booklet that lets them know what you're doing every week, that you are making sure that you are informing parents of what's happening, because by doing that, you're educating them on the importance of what's happening. I know as a young mother, when I had my 4 children, I didn't see these connections because I wasn't looking for them. I didn't know about them. And it wasn't until later when I went on and studied early education that I was like, oh, that's happening. And it's so important. And that's the engagement that's happening. And parents don't make that connection because they haven't thought about it. They haven't been told about it. So I think that we just really need to make sure that we are enlisting them in that. We are making sure that we are bringing them into that knowledge base and that they can recognize those important things that are happening within STEAM education.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That's great, Vanessa. Thank you. So we move on to our next question. It's from Rosie Hegarty. So Rosie is asking Vanessa, when you consider arts in STEAM, for arts in STEAM, how do you see this relating to babies, for example, like very young babies, drawing and role play? Do you think these are things a baby can engage in?
Well, absolutely as well, because I mean, anyone who's seen a young child draw all over your white walls will completely tell you that drawing comes naturally to even young children. And that role-playing engagement also, children are imaginative and they want to create. it's part of their innate, being of what they can do. And it's part of the way that they make sense of the world around them. So absolutely, art, mark making, music and movement, dancing and singing all come very naturally to children. It's something that they want to do, and they spontaneously will do these things. Whereas when you get older children, all of a sudden it's not cool, or we can't do that. But for small young children, they'll naturally start incorporating these art aspects into their learning.
That's great. Thank you very much, Vanessa. Thank you. So we just have a few more questions. This question is from Sharon McCready. Good evening. Thanks for your presentation. In respect of the R in STEAM, don't you see this as a step back towards the 3 Rs, where children are being asked to engage with academic subjects from a very young age? So who wants to take that? Vanessa? Kelly? Maybe Kelly? I don't know.
I think it's, it comes down to our disposition of how we want to engage in the STEM approach. So if we are getting kind of stuck in that cycle of seeing it as more subject-based and not recognizing as integrative, then I think we're getting ourselves into a little bit of bother. So certainly, we do not want to be hauling children over to our desks saying, right, oh my gosh, we have to fit in STEAM today. We have to fit in a reading activity. So children, quick, come over here, sit at the desk and read. That's not what it's about. But if reading is naturally occurring, if those literacy aspects are naturally occurring through just the emergent opportunities, then, I don't think it's a regression. I actually think it's enhancement of development, but I think it certainly comes down to our disposition and how we are approaching STEM,
Excellent. Thanks very much, Kelly.
I also think that as far as reading and writing go, that's naturally within our education system anyway. Children are making sense of the world through symbols as they interact, with the world. I would be very worried if we were sticking a pencil into a young child's hand and saying, you need to write your name before you go to school, because that wouldn't be age or developmentally appropriate. So as far as STEAM goes, I don't know if it's going to really take off as much as STEAM does. And that's really because we already have natural words and writing activities for children that they will do without being pressed to do so. And also you have to remember that the basis for STEM education was to bring back engineering and science and math, and that by incorporating the arts, we're actually getting better outcomes from children because science, technology, engineering, math actually have art aspects within them as well. So I don't think I hope we don't go towards the stream.
Thank you very much, Vanessa and Kelly. Thank you. So we'll okay, here's a question from Sarah Stapleton. Hello, everyone. Thank you for your presentations. The government's vision for STEM education still highlights mostly primary education and secondary, rather than early years. So how can we in the early years sector encourage and promote changes in thinking and build STEM awareness when the government vision does not highlight as much as it could in terms of this early age group? Interesting question.
I think it's probably a whole lot of webinar, but we are very used to being out on our own early years island in comparison really to our primary and secondary colleagues. But I think we need to make that shift kind of starting with ourselves as practitioners, and I had to do a lot of kind of searching, because I think as a mother who I now have an 8 and 6-year-old, when I first kind of heard that whole aspect of STEM, I was like, no, are you kidding me? I don't want my children engaged in screens and technology and oh my gosh. But I think once you start to understand, that core philosophy of STEM and how it's really promoting those 21st century key skills and dispositions that we need in terms of the curiosities and in terms of problem solving and the critical thinking aspects, it becomes easier to make that shift in disposition as a practitioner, and actually then it opens up, a platform to become really excited about. But, we need to be aware, the approach in primary and secondary in terms of STEM is and should be different to what we're doing in early years. So it's making sure that we stay in our early years lane and we don't get entangled really in the subject-based aspects of STEM that we're seeing with our older children.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kelly. That's great. Yeah.
I also think that within early years, we are used to, I agree with Kelly, we're used to being an afterthought, when really we're the foundation for learning with the child. We give these foundational skills that they build upon, and without them, it's a lot harder for children to learn. So I do think that early years needs to have more of an emphasis within policy in general, with governments, and that having more there structured to help early years educators to know what things like STEAM and STEM are and how we can incorporate within our practice. I love that Lillian Katz speaks about those foundational skills and building up a child against the world and what they're going to encounter within education. And she's really interesting to listen to if you ever have an opportunity to do so. But it is an afterthought, and I do think it needs to change so that we can be better at what we do. We're already brilliant at what we do. What we do within early years is amazing, and I think that we excel at it. But to be included with the rest of the educational community, I think would be really beneficial.
That's a whole other webinar, isn't it, Vanessa?
Yeah. Here's nice. Sorry. An interesting comment here from Susan Silver. Susan says, I think having a print-rich environment highlights our curriculum to parents through displays and also exposes children to word formation and the meaning of symbols. Having paper and pencils around the room encourage mark-making opportunities in role play. I think that's a lovely comment. Very appropriate.
Yes.
Yeah?
Absolutely. I think there's a difference between having the opportunities there and forcing opportunities as well. So I completely agree that there's a literature-rich environment for children, and having all of these tools available for children is really important. And I absolutely agree that our rooms should be encouraging mark-making opportunities.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. Just another question here. Aoife Hurley, when you speak about a STEM lens, Kelly, and concepts, what exactly do you mean? How can we be aware of exactly what the child is learning if we don't have specific outcomes or goals? For example, science, numeracy, etc. The concepts appear to be interconnected. Does that not make it harder for us to identify? Is that okay, Kelly?
Yes, thanks, Aoife. I think, but if we just focus on our Aistear framework, that's not goal orientated anyway. It's a holistic approach. It's an integrative approach. It's not specifically saying that our children need to count, 1 to 10, or they need to, have met certain outcomes in science. It's taking that holistic approach. So if we take that STEM lens, I guess what I was trying to advocate there is to, sit in that integrative approach, make sure that we understand the naturalness of STEM and how it is just naturally occurring. It's not something that we have to sit down and pre-plan. We just have to have that knowledge and that awareness of how to really engage in those emergent moments and how to nurture those STEM experiences as knowledgeable practitioners, kind of sensitive and attuned to those naturally occurring experiences.
Thank you very much, Kelly. That's very interesting. Another comment from Marianique Flatot. She just made a comment. It would be interesting to compare STEM and STEAM with early childhood pedagogies, for example, with Montessori or Steiner. I think maybe we might follow up that with further webinars. Yeah, that's a difference.
Well, I think that these principles of science, technology, engineering, arts, and math has been around for centuries. Leonardo da Vinci had beautiful pieces of art that incorporated science and technology and art together. And so I think it very much goes with early childhood theories in general, because it's naturally there. They naturally connect.
Exactly. So I think that's that answered. So I'm just looking, any more questions from any of the audience? Any more questions? Any last minute questions there for Kelly and Vanessa? Okay, I think that's about it. We'll just wait another. Okay, we're waiting here. Okay, well, thank you very much, Kelly and Vanessa. It was a very informative, very interesting webinar tonight. I think you answered all the questions and you give a very good overview of concepts of STEM and STEAM. As I said, this webinar is going to be recorded, and you can access it on our YouTube channel in the next day or two. So if you have any questions, then you can contact Jennifer Mattiassi as well on Portobello. Kelly and Vanessa have kind of given, thank you for all attending. And if you're interested in furthering your studies, check out our early years department on portobelloinstitute.com, or you can call our early years admissions expert, as I said, Jennifer Mattiazzi, on 01-892-0031, or email jennifer.mattiazzi@portobelloinstitute.com. Portobello Institute. Follow your passion, fulfill your potential. And yeah, I think that's about it. As I said, thank you all for taking time out to attend this very informative webinar this evening. Hope you all enjoyed it. Yeah, I think that's about it now, everybody, for this evening.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Okay.